Oil prices may be at 2009 highs, but natural gas has not been this cheap in mid-October on the cusp of another heating season since way back in 2002. Craig Sieben runs Sieben Energy Associates and back with us, friend of the show. Always nice to see you, Craig.
It's good to see you, Tom.
We have natural gas has certainly come up off the bottom from just a matter of a few months ago.
Right.
But again, historic cheap levels into this heating season. Why?
Very inexpensive. Well, we've had a recession. We have a tremendous. Also, it was a very cool summer across the board, and industrial production is down. Production is down across the board.
Let's address the supply side first here. You mentioned the cool summer, meaning not a lot of electric utilities had to ramp up the nat gas usage to generate the electricity to generate the air conditioning. So supply levels are very plentiful this time.
They're extraordinary. I mean, we're going into at the end of the storage season, just in a few days on Halloween, we're going to be at the highest levels we've been in years. 3.8 billion cubic feet.
The good news for those that heat their homes with natural gas, as well as industry that uses nat gas.
For residential, we're talking about $100 savings from last year, where last year it was about $900. This year it'll be about $800. But interestingly enough, around that, the prices were already starting to trend lower in the winter of '08 from their high in the summer. So, about $100 price differential doesn't seem as big as when it was at $13, an MMBTU versus $3 or $4 now.
Although that said, $100 per household over the course of a heating season, that can add up for some nice
certainly
consumer
can.
confidence.
Now, industrial prices should be much lower than that.
Talk to us about industrial demand, because lots of folks familiar with the thermostats at home, but industry uses a significant amount of nat gas, presuming that industry is actually operating.
Well, and a lot of industry is not operating. From automobiles to a wide range of industries that use natural gas, they're just not using as much. Production is down significantly.
Industrial production, in fact, running 70–75%, historic lows since World War II, and that has helped feed in those supply figures you mentioned earlier.
Right, and the interesting thing is they're not even projecting that we're going to get to pre-recession levels of production until 2013.
Production of nat gas.
Production of nat gas.
Wow.
And the other interesting thing is that the ability to get natural gas from shale deposits is projected at about 9% this year. They're projecting that number to be as high as, I think, over 20% by 2013, 2014. Which is so even if you get fuel switching, people coal prices might go up with climate change legislation.
Sure.
But the natural gas prices you think would come up at the same time. It may not be that way because there's a tremendous amount of supply that's available right now. We're finding new sources of supply that we hadn't found previously.
I want to ask you about the public policy implications of climate change legislation, but mentioning supply here, we haven't had a hurricane season.
Correct.
There's been, the ability to get natural gas out of the Gulf of Mexico has not been impinged this year, but yet a lot of those wells are being shut down because the prices have been low.
The prices are so low. About over the summer, 2/3 of the wells were just not producing.
Finally, on the public policy, the climate change legislation on Capitol Hill, does this benefit nat gas prices?
I think it does ultimately. I mean, the recent run-up we've even seen over the last few days, to make it very small then to go broader again, is in part because the perception is that natural gas has been kind of the last cheap fuel when you look at other commodity prices like oil and others that have been rising. But I think long-term trends, natural gas should go higher, but I don't know if it's going to go a lot higher. I don't think we're going to be seeing the kind of pricing that we saw in July of '08, unless there are significantly other factors in the economy or geopolitical issues in the world.
Yeah, likely supply issues are going to have
to. But it's a real interesting question with prices for coal, for oil, for natural gas relatively low from what they were. The question from a policy standpoint is, will we see if we have climate change legislation, many have suggested, gee, it's going to really increase the cost a lot.
Right.
I'm not so sure it will, but we might still. But energy efficiency is still cost effective at these price points, and wind power supplies a lot of peak production in some of these states, like in Texas.
And there is a question of most favored energy under the climate change, at least to bridge over to some of those renewables.
That's correct.
We got to leave it there. Craig, always nice to see you. Craig Sieben along with us. He runs Sieben Energy Associates.
Good to be with you, Tom.